The purpose of this lesson is to help you learn the names of the common laboratory equipment, glassware, and apparatus that you'll be using throughout the semester. The first type of glassware we're going to be looking at is probably one of the most common ones you'll be using. This is a beaker, and it's generally used to hold liquids or to contain liquids. Although there are graduations here, we don't usually use these numbers to give a precise measurement. We just use those as a general approximation of volume. Beakers are oftentimes confused with flasks. This is an Erlenmeyer flask. You can see the biggest difference is that the beaker sides go straight up, whereas the Erlenmeyer flask sides go at an angle before they go straight up. Beakers, Erlenmeyer flasks, and graduated cylinders all can be used to measure volumes or to contain liquids, but if you look at the actual graduations and the numbers on the side, it should be fairly obvious that if you actually need to take a measurement of volume, the graduated cylinders would be your best bet, just because they have more lines and they're more equally spaced throughout, whereas something like a flask, because of its curved sides, it's a little harder to get an accurate volume in there. The other pieces of glassware that you'll be looking at are your test tubes, which most of our test tubes do not have graduations, so they're not usually used to measure volume. They can be used to contain something to mass it on the balance, or they could also be used to heat substances. And we have our watch glass. The watch glass kind of looks like a huge contact lens. The watch glass is oftentimes used as kind of a lid for other things, or to hold things that are being masked at that time. The thing that is oftentimes confused for the watch glass is our glass plate. Notice the difference is the glass plate is square and it's also flat, whereas the watch glass is circular and it is curved. It's a lens. The next piece of apparatus is actually ceramic, although we do oftentimes consider it glassware. This is our evaporating dish. You'll notice that our watch glass fits on the evaporating dish as kind of like a lens or a cover. Our evaporating dish is used to heat substances to evaporate off any of the water that's left on our products. We also have our crucible and our cover, and the crucible and cover is also used for heating things. Big difference, of course, is size and the fact that the crucible has a cover that fits it very well, whereas the evaporating dish, we often just use our watch glass as the cover. If you are using a crucible, it's important that you know the other equipment that goes with it. So if we look at our crucible and cover, you will also have crucible tongues. The crucible tongues fit around the crucible. It cradles it within this larger area, and it can also be used to hold the lid. Although I always tell my kids to always have a hand ready to catch it because they are slippery and they do fall. And since they are made out of ceramic, just like our evaporating dish, they will break if they fall. We also have our pipe stem triangle that's often used with the crucible. That can hold it in case you need to have it above a flame. Now the crucible tongues are oftentimes confused for the test tube tongues, but you see they are very different. Test tube tongues obviously are going to be used to hold our test tubes. They just go like this and clip right in there, whereas the crucible tongues are for the crucibles. So crucible tongues, test tube tongues, and we also have our beaker tongues. Make sure you're using the right apparatus. Beaker tongues hold beakers really well. They can also be used to hold other glassware, but because they have this rubberized coating, you probably do not want to use them with anything that you're heating really hot because this rubber will melt. Whereas the crucible tongues, they don't have any of those coatings, so you can move around incredibly hot apparatus with those without having to worry about anything melting. The next piece of apparatus we have our funnel, which you would generally put filter paper in and use to separate mixtures. We have tweezers, which in science class you'll often see as forceps, but really they're still just tweezers. We have our scoopula. The scoopula is kind of like a spatula, kind of like a scoop. We use it to move around any kind of solid. We have our test tube brush, which can also be used to clean beakers or other apparatus. And we have our stirring rod. This is our wire gauze, and wire gauze is used to protect the actual lab table. It has this ceramic covering in the middle that can absorb an incredible amount of heat. So if you have something like a beaker that you just took off of a hot plate, you would want to put it on your wire gauze before transferring it anywhere else. We have our well plate that just has all of these little plastic areas that you can perform micro experiments in. And finally, we have our Bunsen burner and the striker that we use to light the Bunsen burner. And throughout labs this semester, you'll get plenty of practice sparking this in order to light the burner up. Those pieces of apparatus are the most common ones we will be using. That's not to say that that's an exclusive list, that it includes everything, but it does include the ones that you should be able to immediately identify and take out of your drawer when asked.